Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and it's good to see you all here today. Mhm. Well, in recent weeks, we've been discussing the Tenso Kyokan, the Instructions to the Cook by Eihei Dogen. And um, in past weeks, we talked about Dogen's encounter with a couple of the monastery cooks, Tenzos, in Chinese monasteries when he visited there as a young man, and the profound effect those encounters had on his view toward what is practice and what are the scriptures for. So the next section goes into a discussion of, I guess, to put it succinctly, a discussion of ordinariness. Ordinariness. And I'll just read a couple of selections from that section. In preparing food for the community, it is crucial not to grumble about the quality of the ingredients, but rather to cultivate a temper which sees and respects them fully for what they are, which sees and respects them fully for what they are. A dish is not necessarily superior because you have prepared it with choice ingredients, nor is a soup inferior because you have made it with ordinary greens. When handling and selecting greens, do so wholeheartedly with a pure mind and without trying to evaluate their quality in the same way in which you would prepare a splendid feast. The many rivers which flow into the ocean become the one taste of the ocean. When they flow into the pure ocean of the Dharma, there are no such distinctions as delicacies or plain food. There is just one taste, and that is the Buddhadharma. The world itself is as it is. In cultivating the germ of aspiration to live out the way, as well as in practicing the Dharma, delicious and ordinary tastes are the same, and not two. There is an old saying, the mouth of a monk is like an oven. Remember this well. Ordinary greens. So this reference to the metaphor of an ocean is an old one that originally used by Shakyamuni Buddha, talking about the ocean of Dharma and how the ocean of Dharma, well, how the physical ocean, oceans all over the world have just one taste, the taste of salt. And Dharma has, in its various manifestations and in various traditions, has just one taste, and that is the taste of freedom. The many rivers which flow into the ocean become the one taste of the ocean. And later in that passage, what might be kind of a confusing conclusion, the mouth of a monk is like an oven. Um, Tom Wright, the translator, explains that that expression is used to tell the fact that monks eat what they're given when they go on begging rounds throughout the village or wherever. They they eat what they are given, just as an oven accepts whatever you put in it. Likewise, understand that a simple green has the power to become the practice of the Buddha, quite adequately nurturing the desire to live out the way. Last spring, a friend of ours gave us 6 collard plants. Now, I had never grown collards before. I'd actually never eaten collards or cooked them anyway. I'd eaten them at a restaurant, perhaps, where somebody who knew how to prepare them prepared them. And but I was always intimidated by them. They look so big and uh, tough that I just thought, well, that can't possibly be easy to prepare. But we planted the collard plants, and they were surprisingly hardy. They grew quickly, they grew large, they were relatively immune to the various pests in our garden. And we ended up having collards throughout the entire summer and into the fall from those 6 plants. They were very abundant and not difficult to fix, as it turns out. You just need to, take out that central spine, which is rather tough, and then cook them long enough. And they're very tasty greens. So it brings up the topic of ordinariness. Why are they considered ordinary greens? Perhaps because they're just so abundant and so they grow so well. Especially as the climate warms here in Missouri, they seem to love it. So because they're relatively abundant and not scarce, they're relatively cheap. If they were very difficult to grow and scarce, they would undoubtedly be considered more of a specialty. But as it is, they're ordinary greens. And Dogen goes on to talk about, oh, I just let me try to do this if I can. So just mentioned that not too long ago, less than 2 weeks ago, I planted some collards in the basement under lights to plant this year. I was so impressed with them, and they just took right off. They seem to just really want to grow, and they are much bigger now than all the other things I planted downstairs. So Dogen goes on to expand this notion of ordinariness to people. Similarly, do not judge monks as deserving of respect or as being worthless, nor pay attention to whether a person has been practicing for only a short time or for many years. Without knowing where to find out our own stability, how are we to know where someone else would be most stable? The notion of finding stability comes up a couple times in this Tenzo Kyoken, finding your place, playing your part. There may very well be differences between those who have been practicing over many years and those who have just begun, or between those gifted with great intelligence and those not so gifted. Even so, all are treasures of the Sangha. Even so, all are treasures of the Sangha. Though someone may have been mistaken in the past, he may very well be correct in the context of things now. Who is to say whether someone is a fool or a sage? So last night, I received a message that my cousin Carolyn had died at a hospital in Salem, Massachusetts. I haven't seen much of Carolyn during her adult life, but I remember vividly when she was a young person, probably in her late teens. We used to visit them. She lived in Michigan at that time, where her father managed a canning factory for tomatoes. And she was very musically gifted, and as a teenager was playing the organ for her church. And I witnessed this one time, and I was just awestruck. I was amazed. I mean, she playing notes with both hands is challenging enough and really hard for me to grasp. But to play notes with both hands and your feet, while at the same time pushing and pulling stops to change the color of the tone, all of that going on at the same time while you're navigating all those notes in a Bach fugue was just amazing. Carolyn to me was just amazing. Well, she continued to play in the at her church, and as time went on, we saw them less and less. And her father died, and then her mother died, and she got married. She married a very energetic fellow, always doing projects, but unfortunately, he died in his 40s from a heart attack, leaving her as a single mother of a daughter. Her daughter grew up and moved to the Northeast, where she learned to be a investment banker. And she fell in love with a charismatic ski instructor, got married, and had children of her own, two of them. The ski instructor proved to be an unreliable partner, at least from her perspective. And they ended up getting a divorce. So she was a single mother. And living in Boston at that time, Carolyn went out to Massachusetts to be near her so she could help out with the grandkids. And that's where she remained, even as the grandkids grew up and left for various places. So earlier this week, she developed a urinary tract infection, which quickly moved into sepsis, and uh, the doctors at the hospital were able to get her through the sepsis, but she had a complication of a large hemorrhagic stroke from which she could not recover. So that, in very brief, was Carolyn's life as I knew it, seemingly an ordinary life, and yet amazing. So this notion of ordinariness and amazement um, are a distinction we make. And it can influence, of course, the way we treat things and treat people. Dogen, I think, is encouraging us to investigate that. He concludes this little section of the Tenso Kyokan with, though a person might be fortunate enough to be appointed to the office of a Tenso, of a cook, if he or she lacks the aspiration to walk the way, he will return empty-handed from the mountain of goodness and the ocean of virtue. Yet, though a person may not have awakened the spirit of a bodhisattva within him or herself, if he or she encounters someone who has done so, it will be possible to practice the way of life of the Buddha. I think Dogen then referring back to the very special encounters he had with the monastery cooks in China. So I think I'll stop there and I guess leave you with the question of, what is this notion of ordinariness and specialness? And how does it affect the way we treat things and treat people? What is this? What is ordinary? Um, Thank you very much for being here today. We will go into breakout rooms and return for discussion. We may cut things a little short today because there is an event um, a little ways from here that I and perhaps some others will be participating in a discussion of engaged Buddhism at the Thai temple. So we'll go into breakout rooms now, and I'll see you back in a few moments. Again, thanks for being here.